Hello to everybody out there in radio, TV, and internet land. I am Alex Habersham, your host for A Call to Action. And I was thinking this morning, there are two things that could affect in a positive manner the problems that we have with poverty and everybody not doing as well as they could do in a community. And two of the things that could address them are employment and training. We've got all kinds of problems in our community as it relates to health, and as it relates to employment, and as it relates to the quality of life. But I think sometimes we overlook the role that training and working and being gainfully employed plays in our community. Well, this morning I notice I said we, which means it's not just me. So fortunate to have a young lady who is versed in training and employment. And we're just going to have kind of like a fireside chat about what she specifically does on her job with Atrium Navicent Health, and also generally, how important, personnel matters and human resource matters and training and employment are in society. She's an expert, and I'm sure she enjoys what she's doing because she is still doing it and has been doing it for a while. And that person is none other than Miss Akilah Griffin. How you doing this morning?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me, Alex. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good for you to be back. It's good to talk to you again. Well, let's come out of the chute talking a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
Uh, I know you've been around a while and been engaged in this profession for a while. So talk a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I'll start with this. I use the phrase, or I guess the statement. Kansas City is where I was born and raised. Texas polished me, and now Macon is my home. What I mean by that is my journey started, of course, in Kansas. Grew up in a home where my mother was in community health. She was a nurse of 50 plus years, retired and didn't want to retire. That's one of the things that really prompted me to be interested in community health first, but I actually came out the gate wanting to be a nurse because that's what I saw growing up. You see it, you be it, right? But on through the years, started at Kansas State University. And so while I was there, I obtained my CNA license. One of the things that I grew up with, fortunately, was a household with a father who was very adamant about the importance of trades. And so that's where my passion comes in when I emphasize that, hey, trades are where it's at also, right? So I went to college and I got a trade, and that trade happened to lead me into the nursing realm. Well, fast forward, accepted into nursing school after leaving K-State. All that time, I worked as a CNA my entire college career. It was probably one of the best paying jobs as a college student, too. So that was a little personal motivation. But I figured if I'm headed in the direction of being a nurse, I might as well become a CNA. So I had the opportunity to work in nursing homes, development centers, you name it. I got that exposure in college, but when I transitioned to Texas, that's when HR met me. I had the pleasure of working for a large health system at that time, probably my junior year. And I never made it to the nurse clinicals for this very reason, but I had the opportunity to work with a very powerful registered nurse, and I still keep in touch with her to this day. I consider her my mentor, albeit she's in her 80s. She still has a lot of knowledge for me. And so she had recommended I look into HR. And the rest is history. I called my mom and said, hey, I hope you won't be too terribly upset with me, but I'm changing my major to interdisciplinary studies with a HR focus. And she said, is that what makes you happy? And I said, I think so. She said, well, do it. you know. So that's how HR found me, but healthcare never left me. I was able to pull in that CNA experience, the experience I gained from the nurses that I learned from. I started that exposure actually in a high school graduate program, kind of like our CTAE programs, only we didn't call it that back then. But I started as an extern, just observing on the L&D floor in nursing. So it has always been in me. A sense of community is huge. I have my grandparents on all sides migrated from the South to the Midwest, and that sense of community and village. And hey, if somebody's sick, we got you. If your kid is walking down the street and we see them not doing something, the whole community comes out and says, hey, what are you doing? That's the environment I came from. And so the community aspect has always been in me. And so now in my role at Atrium Health Navicent, I support and lead talent acquisition for Georgia under the Advocate Health umbrella. But all those elements of community and a sense of community sustainability, I carry it with me into whatever organization I'm working with, because that's a part of who I am. And so that was very key for me.
And it's very, very important because you mentioned three things
Mhm.
that I believe in very strongly. That's mentorship, and community, and training. Well, 4 or 5 really, and respect, and
Mhm.
it takes ability and all of those things. So I think that we cannot overemphasize,
Yes.
the importance of community involvement and mentorship and CTAE and programs like that. As a matter of fact, you'll be pleased to learn that I've got twin interns in my office as we speak.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I've had them for a week, and matter of fact, they made me feel real good last week. They came in, and they've only been here for a week, but they came bearing gifts. My birthday is this month, so they were bearing gifts for Father's Day and for my birthday. So, but I can tell the kind of effect, and this is kind of connected to what we're going to talk about. It's
Okay.
connected to training and exposure, and employment, paid or
Mhm.
unpaid, and experiences. So, I think that it's important, particularly as we try to uplift the community, that we talk about training.
Yeah.
And then you just talked about training and how
Mhm.
you went from one thing to the other because of your exposure and your training in those respective areas. So talk a little bit about the importance of training and being in an environment. Sometimes we're in environments where we are trained and don't even realize that
Yes.
we're being trained. So talk a little bit about the importance of training and tie that in to what Atrium Navicent is doing as it
Mhm.
relates to trying to impact the community through training. A lot of times people say, I don't have a job and I can't get a job. Well, you need a skill in many instances, but there
Mhm.
are so many resources available where one can gain those skills. So talk a little bit about training.
Absolutely. So, number one, training can start wherever you find yourself. Being able to recognize the teachable moment in anything that you're involved in is so important. And I emphasize this with anyone I might be mentoring or speaking with at schools, and even my team here. At work, it's something we always have to be mindful of, and it's also something that even me and you, we have to be mindful of every day, because we might get set in our normal routines and say, oh yeah, we know how to do that. But if you're at the table with someone and you find that they have, more skills in a particular area than you, that is also a training moment. So I'd say number one, always recognize when you are resting and standing and working in a teachable moment, because it doesn't have to be formal. It could be much like my situation, mentors of observation. Students may get that first whim of, I never thought that I could do something like that. Tell me more about that. So you have to be open to receiving that information too from the people that you find yourself surrounded by But the training programs formally through the high schools, those are some of the best gateways to understand what opportunities you can be credentialed and build stackable credentials towards a certification for, right? At Atrium Health Navicent, one of the things that we did last year was introduce 2 workforce development programs that captured high school students through our Rise to Success program, and that opportunity allowed them to come in. Many of them who didn't have, maybe they didn't have the resources, I'm not sure, but it provided an opportunity for them to get exposure to a part-time job, as well as get an opportunity to have their school paid for up to 3 years. So that's one burden or one barrier that some people feel like they have. Yeah, I know I need the training, but I can't afford it. Well, we introduced a program that takes that burden and worry off of the table as well. So they get to finish their associate's degree, the work towards their associate's degree while working in a part-time job. And then after they're done, they work for us for another year. And hopefully, as long as they want and they continue to matriculate and advance in their respective area of interest. Likewise, when we introduced that in 2023, we saw a need while we were out in the community talking to the students, the parents, the counselors, more than anything, because they hear the challenges, not just from their current students, but from alumni. So we realized, hey, what about the people still out there trying to figure out life if they've graduated from 1 to 5 years? Maybe they're working in retail right now, but that's not really where they want to be. How can we get them back engaged in learning and being interested more about healthcare? So we created the Bridge to Success. It's a bridge to help you kind of get over whatever it is you feel is a barrier to you. So we introduced that program. So, and then training comes with exposure. Simply exposure. This year, we rolled out our 3rd workforce development program, new, and we're piloting it here in Bibb County, but it gives high school students an internship opportunity, like the story I just told that I had way back when. I will not tell the year, but it's the same concept. You give the kids an opportunity to come and do a rotation throughout the organization. They get exposure to our resident physicians, our graduate medical education teammate, which is Dr. Moore. We're partnering together on this, as well as Sheila Rollins, who is our workforce development program manager. And we came together and created this because they need the exposure. So again, recognizing when you're in a teachable moment and then identifying opportunities to get exposure. So this program is specifically geared towards high school graduates. Literally, they just graduated. And it's an internship, a paid internship program where they have a 4-week rotation to see a little some of everything while they're here. Now, not only that, yes, they get that insight about the job, but what about the life skills part? So that's embedded into their curriculum. They're going to hear from me that talks about how do you position yourself in an ever-changing world? How do you stay motivated when you hear the no's as you go through this journey, right? Whether you're going to go straight to work or you're going to hear whatever you come against in college. We give them different professional development sessions like that, financial literacy, how to communicate, how to engage with all of the individuals you might meet while you're here in this internship. And not only that, how you're engaging with people out in the world, out in this community. So, the soft skills, we know there's a gap there, but that just breeds a big opportunity. So we connected all of those things into this program. So training is extremely important. But because we have to be ever changing and innovative, we have to be mindful of what that needs to look like for the students, because everybody's coming from different situations. Maybe they like training in a structured way, and that's great, and they get that. But one of the things that as leaders we can't lose sight of is how else can we deliver training? Maybe it's through mentorship. Maybe it is through the observation programs. It could be a number of things. So that's kind of how we structured that, the importance and focus around that. But just life in general, those are some key things. If I had to leave those nuggets, it would be it.
Well, thank you very much. So let's move on to some older folk, because, there are oftentimes we don't realize, particularly, you got a lot of people out there who really are desirous, they say anyway, of
Hmm.
being gainfully employed. And
Yes.
there are so many opportunities out there in the workplace, not only at Atrium Navicent, but just throughout the community. And I think it's incumbent upon us who are concerned about the community, who want to see the community grow generally. But what we have to realize is that sometimes this has to be approached from the bottom up
Hmm.
rather than the top down. So you got to find those people who maybe sometimes are kind of hard to hire, who might think that they're hard to hire, or who might think that they don't have opportunities out there in the workplace. So what kind of programs are you familiar with, particularly with Atrium Navicent and others if you're familiar with them? But what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to throw out there is the help to motivate some people
Hmm.
to say, well, hey, I might have a lower level job and I might not have a job at all, but if I can get into some kind of system, if I am really determined to improve my quality of life, then there are resources and programs and avenues
Right.
that I can utilize to do that.
Right, right. So one of the things, and there are many things, right? One of my experiences and something I definitely look forward to providing to the making community is simply, and you've heard me say this before, Alex, we meet people where they are. If we know, for example, there's adults who are trying to better their situation and elevate, whether that's through education or trying to develop a skill to beef up their resume so they can feel confident applying, then guess what? Maybe in partnership with a community center, we need to set up little small webinars and classes between the hours that they don't work, meet them where they are to give them those skills. So doing things like that, having different discussions, what we're doing right now, having targeted focuses maybe on particular topics that most individuals are concerned with, teaching people how to navigate through the recruitment process, right? To teach them, hey, here's what happens when you hit the submit button across any industry, not just healthcare, but here is what that process looks like. Let me help you be more marketable. Let me show you what the system looks for in terms of keywords and things like that. People don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times, and you said we're focusing on the older, older adult group that might be looking for employment. That's a large part, the gap in technology, use and access. Now, access to technology might also be a challenge for individuals, especially when you're living in a world where the only way you can submit interest for a job is through a computer. That's a problem if you're living in an area where you don't get good reception, where your neighbors 2, 3, 4 blocks from you don't get good reception. How do we find out about that? Going and talking to them, meeting them where they are, community centers, parent student meetings, centers, events, and just really creating a village type of network so you can understand what the challenges are. It's kind of like having little mini town halls so you can hear from them directly. What are your challenges? I think a lot of times people assume, oh, everybody knows how to do that. Well, do they? Because they've shared that they don't really know what happens after they hit the submit button. Back to the application example, right? So I think being able to understand, number one, what their needs are. We start talking about social determinants of health, right? A lot of that is stemmed around those socioeconomic factors, the gaps in access, and the technology gap is one of them, right? And so that's a big difference from someone that is very well versed in all the things technology and they can speed through Google and figure it out versus those who may not be. And so accommodating them with different learning styles too, I think is the second thing I'll say, and making sure that we keep that in consideration. So for adult learners or adults trying to get into a particular field, and again, maybe it's not healthcare. Maybe they're transitioning into healthcare or out of healthcare or into education or out of education. how do I make myself appear knowledgeable because I'm bringing my experience to the table, but I may not have all the fancy degrees, but I know what I'm doing. Where should I be looking? How should I get connected? What are the networking tips? What are people looking for? So it really has to be conversational when we interact with individuals in the community that has those similar challenges, and just be present, not for a moment, but have a consistent presence so they know, hey, I couldn't make it to this webinar that's happening at the library, but once we do that, then we'll be able to come through and give them the knowledge and information that they need.
Thing as it relates to what a person can do to kind of uplift him or herself. And one thing I wanted to mention as it relates to piggybacking off of your
Mhm.
conversation is that, you know, and I tell people this when I'm doing training, whether it's with kids or adults,
Mm.
there are resources available in the community. And you just alluded to that, and they don't necessarily have to come to you. I think what you and I tell people that irrespective of what kind of problem you have, it could be social, it could be health, it could be economic, it could be political, it could be spiritual, developmental, whatever kind of problem you're having, it could be credit, you know, income, employment, you know, whatever kind of problem you're having, there are resources available in the community.
Yes.
What you were talking about, workforce development. It's the Middle Georgia Consortium,
Hmm.
you know, in Warner Robins, but they serve the whole area. And the point that I'm trying to get out to the community, and I'm sure you join me in projecting this, is that, you know, don't just stand there, do something.
Yes.
If you want to do something, ask somebody. So then there is more available in the community than we sometimes realize. So what happens if a person in fact is interested in joining Atrium Navicent? You know, I mean, you all got and my hats off to Del Vecchio and you and Cindy and all of you for the good job that you are doing in the community. I was at an event and they asked me how I felt. I said, I'm Atrium Amphitheater happy, you know, reflecting on what the amphitheater has meant is meaning to this community. And of course, being very, very proud of Atrium's involvement in that process and in it being named Atrium, Atrium. And what's that process for one to try to become a part of that phenomenal organization?
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with our entry level, right? And then I'll go into professional and levels where you absolutely must have, degrees, certifications, and licensing, right? But for entry level, a lot of our opportunities can start in our transporter to fill for all of the different lines of service that patient transport supports, also clinical tech. If you think of the career path, take my story, for example. If that was me present day and I didn't have a CNA, but I knew that I wanted to get my CNA, the ideal role for me here at Navicent would be a clinical tech role because it doesn't require a license for a certification. Get that exposure, you get those opportunities to see what a day in the life would look like while still helping serve in the capacity that you can when you're not a CNA. So I think that's an excellent foot in the door opportunity that will take you, if you're interested in nursing, for example, or just plain and simple, any area of patient care, because clinical techs can branch off and say, hey, I'm interested in respiratory work. I think this is where I want to be. So I think that those two are probably some of the best entry level opportunities and that's required is a high school diploma. And then from there, we've got environmental services, of course, that is from our facilities and operations standpoint. They make us look good. That plain and simple, that's what they do in EVS. And so they the entire hospital. So maybe if you come in as an EVS tech, and you work to support, the med surge area, but you still get to work with other colleagues that are supporting other areas, and you start talking and you start networking and you say, maybe I need to look into that. You start hearing about our educational assistance programs and you say, you know what, I think I can do this. I think I can get my bachelor's degree. So that's what I'm going to do. In skilled roles, and most of those do require a degree or a license, like a registered nurse, licensed practical nurse, any of those licensure related roles, those are available. We also have non-clinical roles that are not patient, maybe not patient facing, but at some point you engage with the patient or their family. So we have registrars and things like that, guest services. So we have a number of operational jobs, clinical jobs, as well as non-clinical. So that's what we have. Now, how do you go about applying? If you go to our career site, which Atrium Health Careers, you simply Google that, we should be the first thing that you see. And you can type in Macon, Georgia, and all of our open job opportunities will come up. Or you can also email your resume to navicentjobs@atriumhealth.org, and someone can reach out and connect you with the particular recruiter for the area that you identify you're interested in. Beyond that, when you go to our careers page, if you submit your application, that application goes into what we call an applicant tracking system. Follow-up calls, discussions. Who do I call? What happens to my resume? Does it go in this black hole? What happens to it after that? Our recruiters are well-versed and well-skilled to walk people through the process. Knowledge is power. And that's why we have to get in the community and teach people, hey, this is what happens when you hit that submit button, like I said earlier. So that's how they can access the jobs. And those are a couple of the opportunities.
You have gone through the full gamut, all the way from community to available resources in the community, all the way from the lower pay into the highest paying jobs at Atrium Navicent, and all the way to community involvement and resources. So our objective, and I'm sure you agree with me, is that we want to make this a better community. And two ways to make this community better are through training and through employment. And then I think you've done an outstanding job of addressing those and other elements as it relates to improving the quality of life in our community. And I'm so appreciative. This is a call to action, and I want you all to join my YouTube channel. And then if you see something, or if you hear something, or if you want to suggest something, then email me at habersham7@gmail.com. And we, of course, will be putting this show on Bounce TV on Sunday mornings, and we're also on Magic 100 on Sunday morning. We're also on Alex Habersham YouTube channel. We're also blessing it out through Macon Black Pages. But our objective is to continue to impart valuable information such as what we have done this morning. We have had a discussion with Miss Akilah Griffin.
Yes, sir. You got it.
That is correct. Who is the talent acquisition? Oh, I love the way that rolls. The talent acquisition professional at Atrium Navicent Health. We are so appreciative of all that you do, all that your department does, all that Atrium does for the community. And, we're just proud of what you're doing, and keep up the good work. This is a call to action. I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great day.
www.makingblackpages.com